Well, you can tell this one's going to be a fun one. So the title of this panel discussion is Staying Relevant and How Established Brands Can Evolve with Culture. You probably have heard today from Dr. Marcus Collins. So he is not only a professor at the University of Michigan.
Go Blue.
But also best-selling author of the book. If you haven't, check it out. I ordered it last night on Amazon.
Thank you so much.
For the Culture.
That's right.
You also worked at iTunes. I went deep in your bio, my friend, deep in your bio. You worked at iTunes, Nike, and what I found to be very interesting is that you ran digital marketing for Beyonce.
I did indeed, yes. Yeah. That's before my advertising career.
I thought that was so rad.
He added the Beyonce part. It was just B at the time, and he added so Dr. Collins.
Don't stand
That was Dr. Collins.
You get me in
I ruined
trouble.
the illusion. Sorry.
This is also going to be a comedy sketch. And then we also have Mark Weinstein. So he is the CMO of Hilton. And also,
For this day.
they just added to his plate, he is also now the head of luxury brands at Hilton.
Woo!
Let's go.
I'll take it where I can get it. Thank you.
Okay, I want to start here because this whole panel discussion is around cultural relevance. Dr. Collins, can you explain what cultural relevance is? And can you explain also the difference between a cultural moment and a cultural trend?
Sure. So culture, by definition, at least through the lens of sociology, is culture is a system of conventions and expectations that demarcate who we are and govern what people like us do, right? It's a system by which we identify what's expected of us and what is acceptable for us. So when we talk about cultural relevance, we talk about the beliefs, artifacts, behaviors, language, and production for people like me. Right, based on who I am and how I see the world, what do people like me do? Where do we go? How do we talk? What do we eat? Who do we marry? Who do we date? How we bury the dead? If we bury the dead, these things are all byproducts of what is acceptable for us. So relevance is really about congruence between something that is and the conventions of people like us. So we talk about cultural moments. Cultural moments are these moments in time that have meaning. For instance, if you are Hispanic, young woman, almost 16 years old, how do you celebrate that moment in life? Quinceañera, right? But if you're Jewish and you are turning 15, 16 years old, how do you celebrate that moment in life? Mitzvah. And if you are secular, in the States at least, you're a young woman turning 16 years old, how do you celebrate that moment in life?
Sweet 16.
These are all moments, the same milestone in one's life. However, they are experienced differently because of their cultural subscription. And because of who you are, you therefore observe that moment in life differently and engage in it differently. That's how a moment that one would say is an instance in time becomes a cultural moment for people like me. So we get into like trends. Trends are sort of the adoption of behaviors in a moment in time. But they aren't cultural moments yet because they have not become salient in the sustainable rituals and traditions of a group of people. And that difference is about time horizon and I would say permanence.
Now, we're here to talk about established brands, and Hilton is the definition of an established brand. It's been around for 100+ years. So, Mark, I know that you've had some major cultural wins, in my opinion. The one that really stands out to me is with Deepika Padukone. And if anyone's not familiar with her, she's an Indian actress, entrepreneur, influencer. I mean, if you look her up on Instagram, 80 million followers. But you ran a campaign with her, and it garnered 5 billion views. If we just take a moment for that, 5 billion views. You think Taylor Swift got that? Closest she got is like 3.7.
Oh, don't pick a fight with Taylor. Did you not? I do not have enough money or time to dig us out of that one.
What I said.
Point taken, but let's not pick on the Swifties.
Okay, the only one close, I have to call it out, is Gangnam Style, PSY, was the only other artist that got 5 billion views.
Yeah.
what went through the team's mind to create this? And I also want to understand, like, were you sitting in a boardroom just watching it like uptick and be like, oh my gosh?
Well, my mom watched it a million times, which helped, which is helpful. Honey, I watched it. I'm like, that's great, Mom. You're already brand loyal. Look, I think if you go back to the premise of your question for just 1 minute, I think sometimes what legacy brands or heritage brands forget is that we got here by disrupting culture. We got here because we saw a need in the world that wasn't the obvious thing, that wasn't the way people thought of it. And our founder, Conrad, went to buy a bank in Cisco, Texas, and ended up leaving with a hotel. And had this idea that he could fill the earth with the light and warmth of hospitality. His view was not that we're in the lodging business or travel business. So you start by disrupting it. You have airport hotels. Hilton invented it. Room service. Hilton invented it. In-room TVs. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. First Grammys at our hotel. John Lennon writes Imagine. Like, you have all these moments in culture. And then somewhere along the way, you become the establishment. And you become so big that you almost forget the need to recreate moments that matter. That is certainly a strategy, but I'm really compelled by what Dr. Collins says in his books and sort of talks a lot about, which is don't invent your own culture. Find a culture that would authentically use your brand, authentically co-opt the relationship. And that's what we did in India, right? We were kind of slow. All the hotel companies are quite slow to enter India. Just to give you an example, there's about 200,000 branded hotel rooms in India right now for 1.45 billion people. In the US, there's over 3 million branded hotel rooms for 300 million people, right? So huge opportunity. We could go in there and say, hey, look at us. We're credible. We could run advertising on TV. We could do all these things. And people go, okay. Or you could pick somebody they already know, the most beloved Bollywood star who just had a baby, who has this work ethic hustle that she's known for, that people admire, look up to, and you can show that you're the brand for her. You can show that people do think, believe, and buy our brand because that's what she does. And so we started with the insight of that. We started with the idea that we wanted it to be authentic. She had to be somebody who actually likes our brand and stays with our brand. Doesn't take many scrolls to realize they've done 10 other brands with your competitors, right? And then the idea comes through the creative process. But it really is about tapping into an established group of people. In that case, there's a bit of nationalism. There's a bit of pride of being Indian and being part of that emerging middle class. Another 100 million people will join the middle class in the next 5 years. Sometimes it's F1 fans. Sometimes it's our Paris Hilton relationship. It can be all kinds of moments, all kinds of tribes that people subscribe to. But don't invent your own. Find one that exists and let's tap into it authentically.
Just really a quick question around figuring out who to work with. Was that done? Did you work with your agency? Did internally you all figure out the talent that you wanted to work with for that cultural moment?
All the above. And what we're watching for is, there's fast culture moments, right? There's these trends you can jump onto, and we might come to that at some point. You can get a moment out of it. But to be authentic, you need to watch the longer trends. What is going on along the way? So we started backwards. We looked at what customers weren't we necessarily credible with. And it was a bit easier with a mass influencer, to be honest. But we also do it with 20,000 person follower influencers here in the States. You start with who you're trying to talk to, and you work backwards from who do they follow? What are they passionate about? How do we authentically show up for them? Could we be credible with them in that space? Then we have our agencies do the due diligence. You'd be surprised, maybe you would not be, but people have lots of opinions on lots of topics that we don't necessarily want to enter the arena with. On various political events and whatnot. So you're having that vetted along the way. But it starts with knowing your audience and working back. Who do they look to? Who are their credible people? Sometimes major celebrity. Sometimes it's a blogger that you've never heard of, or an influencer you've never heard of, or a creator that has an affinity, a passion point, something really near and dear to a niche community.
What I think is actually really impressive about the work Mark and the team has done is that while they have done due diligence on understanding who their people are, they've been very square on understanding who you are, right? Very, very much sort of focused on this idea that we're not in the travel business, we're not in the lodging business, we're in the hospitality business. So the language for the stay is a way by which that's communicated. It's experienced when you're here and you find the people who can evangelize because they've experienced for themselves and they can do it in the context of who they are. But it's like Lauryn Hill says, how you going to win if you ain't right within? Right? It's about understanding who you are first to know who your people are. And then what are the cultural contexts in which we can engage those people and their people to create this kind of cacophony that becomes the brand's presence in the cultural zeitgeist.
I love the way you frame that up because, the question we're always asking ourselves is, does the world need us in this conversation? Right? A lot of times they don't. We have a lot of policies that are about doing good in the community for our employees, our team members, all the stakeholders we have. As a brand, though, there's lots of stuff that people don't care what our opinion is, right? At the end of the day, they don't really care. And then there's a bunch of topics where we credibly have the right to win and play, and credibly people look to us. So, for example, not to take it real serious for a second, but human trafficking, unfortunately, happens a lot in the travel space. People expect us to have a strong point of view on what we're going to do in that space. They don't expect us to have a strong point of view on, abortion or guns or, and so as a brand, we need to show up in those conversations that matter most to the brand, that matter most to the tribes that count on us. As a company, we have all kinds of other points of view on how we take care of our people. But the first thing we're asking ourselves is, do we belong in this conversation? Do we have a unique point of view that we should be offering the world here? Can we credibly enter this conversation?
Now, I want to talk about the AI and then the human side of culture. Dr. Collins, AI, in my opinion, is a part of our culture now in some aspects. Sure. But how can it help brands better understand what's happening in culture? And then where does it miss the mark? We had a conversation outside about how maybe an AI actress wouldn't be necessary right now.
Yeah. So I think AI, like any other technology, they are cultural tools because we leverage them in our cultural practices, right? They are cultural production, not unlike artifacts like pottery. These things are artifacts that are part of the way in which we engage in life. In technology, just like the wheel, they are all extensions of human behavior, as Marshall McLuhan would say, right? Wheel extension of the foot, glass extension of the eyes, clothes extension of the skin, light extension of the day. And the technologies we use today are all extensions of our day-to-day lives, which says to me then that our focus shouldn't be on the technology. It should be on us, humanity. The tech is only going to go as far as we go. So what does that mean for culture? Culture, by and large, is a means by which we make meaning. And the technology itself, especially AI, it's a predictive machine based on what already has been done. But new meaning is actually breaking the orthodoxy. It is, by its very nature, subversive. Who would thought that you take a disco sample with a break beat from James Brown and you have some guy sort of talking over it would be one of the most consumed genres on the planet? That makes no sense, right? So if looking back through an LLM, you would never get to hip hop ever because it doesn't make sense. But it's this idea of reworking, refashioning, contorting, and constructing meaning collectively, socially, is how we get to new ideas, which then the technology helps us do more of it. So while the tech may do a cultural flattening and allow us to see what people are doing and what they have done, how those things are connected, what becomes new is based on the human factor. Therefore, you need both.
You need both. Now, Mark, with Hilton, we were having this conversation of how you may leverage AI to determine different trends, whether it's main character energy, and that you use that for, main character energy, and how you leverage that new trend for one of your brands, and where you had the influencer and comedian, it was a Hannah Berner, come in and create her own guest quest campaign. So that's where I want to understand with Hilton, how are you leveraging AI to maybe figure out some maybe new cultural moments and trends?
Yeah, well, if you take a step a little bit back, I love where Dr. Collins was going, as usual. Say it more elegantly than I could possibly could.
No, he's so good.
You should write
so good.
You should write an award-winning book that I've got 17 copies of on my desk.
I know. I'm sitting here.
I think that the thing to feel really good about with AI, because I know there's a lot of panic right now in our community, and I totally agree it's a human endeavor. It is a great creative equalizer. Because if you have human creativity now, the creating tools at our fingertips are now equalizing any brand, any person in the room by themselves can create just as much content as a beautiful studio like we're sitting in here today, which I think is incredible. On the other side of it, I do think we're at a place where you can't trust anything anymore online, that you can't trust the thing you're seeing exists, is believable. What's the antidote? In-person human experiences. There is a reason why you are all here. We could have all zoomed in on this thing. It would have worked just fine. And yet we all know that that's not authentic. And so for us as a brand, we've got to remind people that the power comes from putting your feet in the sand, knowing the kid in front of you is really there because it's your kid on the beach with you having an experience, not an avatar, right? So an important level set. I do think what it's allowing us to do, though, is find fast culture moments to lean into. So if you take where I started from, which is knowing who we are and not chasing those as trends to build products around, you can talk authentically in a way that the audience wants to listen to you and do things that are credible in that moment. And so watching for what are those trends, what are the things emerging, I think what it's giving us a little bit of a leg up on, which is helpful, is, candidly, we're still a little too slow to respond sometimes. The production process is still a little too, clunky. We can spot it early enough to actually take advantage of it. That's what it's helping us with. You can find something at 10 o'clock in the morning. By 11 o'clock, know that somebody want to take advantage of. Have some storyboards done on AI. Teams are involved in doing it, but they're ideating around noon. We can shoot it by 1 o'clock and have it online by 2, and the algorithms picked it up by 3, right? I mean, that's the advantage of it. But I totally agree with Dr. Collins' point that, it is not intelligent, it is derivative. It's derivative of the past, and if we're not careful, we're all going to end up with the same Helvetica logo and the sort of narrative, because that's what it's going to think is successful.
Now, when we're thinking about sharing the cultural moments across media platforms, Dr. Collins, audiences are everywhere: social, CTV, podcasts, which you and I have had multiple conversations about, live events.
Podcast.
We're working on it.
He's going to make one. Shouldn't he? But what does it take for a brand story to land consistently across all these channels?
I think of it this way. I think it's like there used to be a time where the idea was to be everywhere. If a new platform shows up, make sure you're there and you're delivering stories there so that you are omnipresent. And there is value to that. There's value to that. I'm coming of the mind that it's far more powerful to be in the places where your people are. And if you activate them, they'll take you into all the other places, right? It's the network effects that come from people becoming the vehicle by which other people find out about you. And the truth of the matter is that, that's actually why we do everything, right? I'm thinking about traveling somewhere and I see a lot of hotels come on and I go, let me look at TripAdvisor and see what they say, right? I'm looking at what other people do. Every TV show that you've watched in the last 5 years, you didn't see an ad was like, oh, I'm going to start watching The Bear. No, everybody was like, you need to be watching The Bear. And you hear that from 5 people and you go, I guess I ought to be watching The Bear. This is just what happens. There's no marketing more influential than people, full stop, right? We trust strangers more than we trust marketers. You trust Sexy Lover 24 from Denver on Amazon more than you trust the brand you're actually going to buy from. We trust people. So I think the idea is find out where your people are. Right? The people who see the world the way you do, the people who either already consume you or even better, believe what you believe, share your point of view in the world and go where they are, activate them, and they will take you to the tables where you are not. They'll take you to the places as weak ties to people who were like, oh, I didn't even know that about you, or I didn't even know that they show up here. They'll take your content and bring it in those spaces as opposed to spreading the peanut butter too thin. Again, is it a binary thing? No. But I think that if in a world where resources are becoming more constrained and the media landscape is becoming more fragmented, I think being more judicious about where you put your efforts is probably wise.
I want to land on trust. And we've all had this conversation around podcast and trusting the host. And Mark, Hilton has been a longtime partner of the podcast Smartless. How do you leverage podcasts to stay relevant, stay in those cultural moments, especially with Will Arnett, Jason Bateman? That's one of the podcasts that you've done such an exceptional job with.
Yeah, I think the evolution of marketing has become less about interrupting what you're doing and being a source of actual engagement, which is a good trend. I tend to endorse that as a human. It's also been less about trying to control your brand and being more about putting it in the hands of others. Look, as marketers, it's always been that way. We just didn't want to acknowledge it, right? We would say, oh, we control the brand. We got brand safety. It's always been the word of mouth. It's just now happening in a more mass way. And so I think the thing about audio is it's probably one of the most intimate connections you can have with somebody, right? Think about where you're listening to the radio, listening to satellite radio, hopefully in your case, or a streaming platform, or wherever you get your audio podcasting from. It tends to be either in the car by yourself, when you're on the run in an intimate moment of solitude. It could be when you're falling asleep. It could be on an airplane when you're going to a foreign place that you've never been before. It's a level of intimacy that I think is less appreciated it for what it is. It's companionship, really, more than anything else. And so allowing others to tell our story through their authentic voice, give them a little bit of prompting of what you want them to kind of riff on, but getting them to say it authentically is worth the trade-off of having an advertisement interrupting the podcast. With that, though, there's a lot of fun to be had. So we did an ASMR with Lando Norris. We had McLaren Racing for 20 years as a partner. It's an hour of him making sleep sounds, right? So he's doing the water glasses, and people are literally putting on YouTube on repeat, watching this thing for hours and hours and hours. And I think, it's just a medium that allows you to get into a place that people wouldn't allow a TV, an iPad, even a book in some cases, but they'll let you kind of talk in their ear, literally. And so it's been great for us to tell that authentic story.
I also love what Hilton's done with just the in-room experience. I mean, transforming hotel rooms for that F1 experience or Wicked. How do you find those moments to then transform a whole hotel room?
Yeah, again, back to the conversation we had a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
We found ourselves competing with other brands trying to activate, experiential. You must do experiential. So we would go to a festival ground or somewhere, and we're like, this is stupid. This is not what we do. We're not about temporary structures. We're about bringing you into our world. This is crazy. So when we found these moments and these tribes of passion points, instead of taking ourselves into those communities and trying to be inauthentically there, where if you covered our logo, you wouldn't be confused if it was Hilton or Marriott. You wouldn't know if it was a gas company. You wouldn't know if it was a telephone company. It's like they're handing out Frisbees. What the hell? Yeah, right. And so for us, the unlock was bring them into our space. What do? We do hospitality. And so creating an F1 themed room where you can stay like the drivers, have their menu, what they eat for breakfast, have room service the way they order room service every single night, have their power smoothie, play in the race simulator. So we had McLaren do one for us to celebrate the 20th anniversary in London. We had Paris take one over. She tells me she's the more famous Hilton than our brand. I must concede the point. I think she's right. So we had a room in the Beverly Hilton that she did. We've got one right now with the European, with the UK soccer team, national soccer team in London. We had, I'm missing one. Oh, Wicked. We did a little movie called Wicked here in New York. Yes, where the set designer designed the room. So, for us, it was about taking a thing in culture, a conversation that was happening, which was both a moment, a tribe, and a passion point, but really thinking about what our unique role was in that, which is we do human hospitality. We have people serving people in a beautiful space enabled by great technology. That's what we do. That has to be how we activate.
And to do it with such great nuance as a way of saying that we understand it just like you do. Like, we're not tourists in this, but we are fans of these properties as well. That is the IP, and our closeness to it is just as proximal as you are. So we're experiencing it just like you. I mean, it's again, the brand has a point of view on the world.
Dr. Collins, we have World Cup coming up. How are you thinking about that from a cultural standpoint with World Cup coming to the United States, and how brands can really leverage that moment in time to connect with their audiences?
I mean, it's a bit of a conundrum, honestly. I think that we're in a moment in time in the country. The cultural backdrop as such is that we aren't very worldly at the moment. And the fact that we're inviting the world to North America more broadly doesn't feel like the right vibes. So much so that some countries are going to have to play in Canada or Mexico because they are not invited. So it feels a bit like, not the right timing. That said, I think it is an opportunity for brands to engage this community of people in a way that the country hasn't. I mean, the World Cup has always been not like the forefront for the United States. And for us to host it is almost like, oh, you were invited to the party, come on in. And since we're here, I think this is a good opportunity for brands like Hilton to show we understand this space just like you all do. So as you're coming to be a part of this, we're going to make it feel like home. But that requires, I think, a broader cultural shift outside of what's happening on the field, in the stands, in the proximity, to be much more representative in the broader zeitgeist. And that's a conversation I think we probably don't have enough of.
Really amazing point. And I liked how you said, brands need to think about how they can be welcoming to anyone that is able to come into the States yes, anyone that is able to come into the States. Now we just only have, we are almost out of time, but I want to end with just a quick take on culture. Okay. What's a recent cultural moment you think a brand got it right? And then I'm going to ask the same flip side. What's a cultural trend that brands need to stay away from right now? Hopefully not World Cup.
So I'll do the latter. You do the former. The latter. I think that brands have to stop sucking tailpipe. Like in that, like, you know, you can lead culture by driving it. You can contribute to culture by riding shotgun. But this like jumping on things just to jump on them. It's like, please stop. Like, you know, Brat Summer was actually kind of cool until brands jumped in and said, we're Brat too. It's like, oh man, why'd you do that? Like, that really sucks. I mean, we saw that even with like, to wrap this up with Taylor Swift, like Taylor Swift gets engaged, like, oh, that's amazing. Like, what a beautiful story for a woman who has experienced so much heartbreak and broken a lot of hearts. What a beautiful story. And then you got like Sour Patch Kids. Like, oh man, really? Do you really have a point of view on this? Panera Bread? Look, no shade. If
what
you
do Sour Patch Kids do?
It was something like, oh, we like it too.
I'd love to hear Sour Patch's point of view though on wood. I mean,
That's
that'd be
right.
interesting.
But the
You
like
jump
literally,
yourself
like,
in that pond.
again,
There you go.
no shade,
Here's the comedy.
no shade to any brand, but like Panera said, she said yeast. That was the ew. Someone said ew. Like that's the copiness. Like we have to stop this. Like if you don't have a point of view, please don't say anything because you're actually doing worse than you are benefiting from being a part of the moment.
Totally agree. And you were kind to give me the easier answer. You know, I think of an example. I think what Lego has done with F1 is just brilliant, right? So they don't take themselves too seriously. They know they're in the fun business. They built life-size F1 cars and turned a bunch of a little bit jaded drivers that are living in a bit of a bubble sometimes and turn them into absolute kids on the camera live in front of fans. Lego pieces flying, a bunch of boys being boys. And it really reinforced who their brand was. They knew what moment they could authentically, credibly play in. They did the work. They didn't try to jump on a cultural trend that was not theirs to be had. They took a moment. They were able to co-op it thoughtfully and successfully. When they were done with it for 10 minutes, they gave it back to the fans, you know, to not try to own the moment. They've kind of found fun ways to call back to it. Again, there's a documentary coming out now about the making of the cars. I mean, they're like getting a lot of mileage out of it. But they knew where to show up. They knew how to show up. And they knew when to step out, which I think is a brilliant example.
It's a great example. Mark, Dr. Collins, thank you so much. This has been a pure pleasure right now.
Thank you. It's
Thank
awesome.
you for hosting
Thank you
us.
so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.